right, we're back here live on the studio. My guest is co-host today, Julie King, and our guest on the air, Mr. Adam Castelli. The subject this morning is Alzheimer's, a vicious thing for families to experience. And some of us, we just don't know where to go when that faces us. So Adam Castelli has given himself this morning to talk about that particular subject. Go right ahead, Julie. You had some comments you wanted to make.
I did. Adam, you were discussing the importance of early diagnosis. Are there any current medications that folks can take that can either arrest the progression, or I realize there's nothing out there yet that can cure the disease, but what could they be doing for themselves as far as pharmaceuticals go?
Yeah, as far as pharmaceuticals go, it's good, but it's not good enough. You know, there's not a treatment out there that stops the progression of the disease, and especially the big thing that we look for is a cure for the disease. Mm-hmm. The treatments out there right now are basically symptomatic treatments. So if you cannot sleep because you have Alzheimer's, if you're wandering all night, they have a medication that can help you sleep. Or if you have, you know, just anxiety, depression, apathy, things that come up, they can have a medication for that. And there's also a very important medication for your short-term memory, which can basically make the cells that are still alive more active. It gives you a little more neurotransmitter to work with, and then that can basically give you a little bit more time to live your life normally. But none of those treatments stop the progression of the disease. And so once you get past a certain point, the damage continues to go past that area of the brain, and then the medications aren't really effective anymore.
Something I noted in my research on the internet, I noticed something called an Exelon patch. What is that, sir? And is that a panacea or what?
Yeah, the Exelon patch is a patch that's designed to help you with your short-term memory. And
my wife could just suggest I have that myself.
Yeah, you know, we all kind of think I could really use some help with my memory, but a lot of these medications, they wouldn't really help you out, and some of them have side effects that can actually put people through the ringer. Exelon patch is actually the alternative medication to the more common one, but the more common medication called Aricept can actually give people kind of gastrointestinal problems, because the neurotransmitter that it increases in your brain also exists in your digestive tract that's used for another purpose there. And so it kind of makes that more active, can give you problems there.
Julie, you were going to start saying something. You go right ahead. Please.
Oh, I was recently at a conference in New Orleans, the International Conference on Active Aging, and got to listen to a neurologist speak about the importance of omega-3s and other dietary issues, not just supplements, but what we eat early on in our lives and the effect that it does have on the brain. And I wondered if you had any research on that or wanted to speak to that at all.
Yeah, well, as far as the research goes, omega-3s are one of the few things that actually have research that kind of shows that they do have a benefit for you. So omega-3s can help you with your brain health before a diagnosis, and a lot of other things can too. So anything that improves your heart health can also have an impact on your brain health. Staying active, having a good diet, kind of avoiding the sugars and red meats, and then trying to eat a few extra vegetables and keep the dietary fiber up, things like that can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's later on.
What about the age? Is Alzheimer an unusual thing for somebody at an age under 50 to get?
Yes, definitely.
Uh-huh.
You know, one of the things I haven't mentioned is that Alzheimer's has been linked to a few different genes, and if you get Alzheimer's at age 50, it's very likely that you have a family history where some of those genes are kind of making it a little bit more likely that you'll get the disease. Mm-hmm. There are a handful of different genes out there, and every now and then they'll discover another one that kind of tunes your risk up or down. But if you have one of those genes, it doesn't tell you that you're going to get Alzheimer's. It's sort of like if you've heard of the gene for breast cancer. it kind of, if you have it, you're a little more likely to get it. If you don't have it, you're a little less likely, but that doesn't mean you should feel perfectly safe if you don't have it, or you should, have this death sentence hanging over you if you do have it.
You've given us a lot of information in regards to the person with the disease of Alzheimer's. What can you give for people who are their caregivers, those 24-hour caregivers, to keep the caregiver themselves from burnout, to ensure that they're getting plenty of rest so that they can continue to give the kind of care that their loved one needs?
Yeah. Actually, that is an excellent point, because a lot of people know where their doctor's office is, or they know how to get a diagnosis if they have a disease, and they know how to get a medication. But Alzheimer's is a disease where I've heard of people who, the caregiver was sent to an early grave because they put everything else second to that disease, to taking care of somebody else. And so a lot of the services that the Alzheimer's Association offers are not medical services. They're not services to help person who has the disease. They may not even know. They're services that are for the caregivers to help them find resources, to have support. I'll just make a quick plug. We have a helpline which is 24/7. It's staffed by social workers who work in your chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. So in Bloomington, in Springfield, in Joliet, in Carbondale. The helpline number is 1-800-272-3900. And that number basically, it functions at any stage of the illness. So if you see something, you're a little worried about it, kind of give that number a call. They can say, oh, that's one of the signs. You may need to go get the diagnosis, or you may look for these other signs, or how long has it been occurring. They can also kind of explain the difference between assisted and dependent nursing, all the different types of living situations that a person can go through. They can talk about basically some of the things that may come up. Dad's still driving, what should I do? How do I get the keys away from him? And they can kind of talk you through that conversation, because a lot, basically, to provide a resource, somebody experienced with the disease, or, a support group, something where that person who's dealing with it can know that they're not the only person that's gone through this before.
Right. And how would folks locate an Alzheimer's support group?
That number can get you in touch with those.
Good. I'm going to repeat that number, sir, if I understood it correctly. 800-272-3900.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Good.
Yeah, and so the support groups, we also have a listing on our website, which is alz.org/Illinois. And that listing can give you the up-to-date information, but if you really want to get that support group information, they can give you the phone number, they can connect you to the support group woman who sets those up. And so that helpline is definitely a really, really great resource. And it also helps because, in Illinois, especially downstate, people get more and more spread out, but people also kind of want to retire out in their homes, or they want to kind of be independent as they live later into their lives. And so the more spread out they get, the more they age while they're like that, well, the best way to reach them is often over the telephone. And so that's one of the reasons that we offer those services over the phone.
I wanted to ask also, this matter of mild, I looked this up here, and what normal aging and mild normal aging versus mild Alzheimer's. There's an infinite number of different possibilities as I read this. Would that be correct, sir?
What do you mean by an infinite number of possibilities?
Well, various stages. Some are real manifest, and some are pretty subtle. It seems to me like there's kind of a broad range there of the way this affects various people, the different patients.
Yeah, that's true. And they really try to throw out all of the different possibilities, because it's important not to kind of overlook something, because a lot of people are much more keen to kind of say, well, it's probably not. It's probably something else. It's probably just something I don't have to worry about, because when you do acknowledge that diagnosis, it can be really tragic. So
that's the exact word there, if you ignore it. As a matter of fact, there's really no way to ignore it. It's ultimately, it's going to go downhill from the first time it starts. There's no way of ignoring it. Ultimately, it's going to hit you right in the face.
Yeah, yeah. And, another thing that's available, because I hate to be, it's already a tragic disease, and so I hate to kind of just agree that it's tragic and that it's going to happen. Another thing that's available is, although no clinical research has actually uncovered one, there's always research going on to try and find a cure for the disease. And so one of the other services that we offer is if you are interested in being a part of a clinical trial to try and find a cure for Alzheimer's, we're always helping to recruit for those. There's information on our website, and we basically have a registry where you can sign up, and then if a researcher is looking for someone like you, they can give you a call and ask you if you'd be interested in joining the trial.
Adam, can you tell people what's actually happening to the brain with someone that has Alzheimer's? What's actually going on in the brain?
Well, basically, it starts in the temporal lobe, which is sort of the center and then kind of the bottom part of your brain. And that area of the brain contains an area called the hippocampus, which is where your short-term memory is kind of saved into your long-term memory. And what happens is, over time, normal proteins that occur naturally in everyone's brain, they start to break down and accumulate into something called plaques. And those plaques gum up the works. They don't know exactly what's causing the damage in your brain, but at some point in this process, neurons in your brain start to die. Mm-hmm. And so in that area, when the neurons start to die, that's where you get the symptoms in that area. And those plaques, they start to migrate around your brain. Plaques start to appear in the frontal lobe then, and they start to appear in the parietal lobe. And as those plaques appear, and as these other things called tangles, which is another type of normal protein, but then kind of gone awry.
Right.
As those start to appear, neurons in those areas start to die, and then you lose function in those areas of the brain.
I have noted in my visit to friends at these centers, some folks are affected this way. They just, for one symptom, they just say walk constantly. If they're out of bed, it seems like they work every step they're out of bed. Just keep circling.
Yeah, and if you'll notice, a lot of the Alzheimer's specific units, for lack of a better term, are designed so that a person can walk unimpeded. They can walk in a circle if they want to walk in a circle.
Yeah.
They're allowed to wander. They're allowed to go in and out and walk and not feel like they have to be stopped.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that was kind of a revolutionary concept when it first came out, because it used to be that, people said, oh, Grandpa, I told him to stay down and stay in his room, and he's not listening to me, or, he keeps asking me this question, I just tell him, to shut his mouth or to stop asking me that. Well, it's important to realize that Alzheimer's is a disease. It's not something that's under a person's control. And so a lot of times the best way to deal with it is to kind of take the behavior for what it is, to take that wandering or whatever it is, and then to kind of redirect it, to kind of counteract it, instead of trying to shut it down, because that can just cause kind of a fight, a lot of anxiety.
Right.
Sometimes it's better to just construct things in a way that they can wander. Or if they really want to start cooking, help them out and kind of work with them and just make sure that they're safe and that they're okay, but not to kind of get in the way, because that's just kind of a recipe for a lot of hardship and fighting and anxiety.
It's been my experience that validation is really important to the person with Alzheimer's. For instance, Bill, if you were headed to go outside and I came to you and I said, Bill, where are you going? And you said, I have to leave, I'm looking for my folks. Well, I know your folks have long passed, but you don't know that. So rather than remind you of something painful that you didn't remember, the better choice would be to say, well, Bill, I haven't seen your folks, but I'll help you look for them. Let's go get your coat. And then that takes you away from the door.
Takes their mind away from the door.
And as we're walking away from the door, then I can say, Bill, what does your mom look like? I don't think I've ever met your mom. And have you describe her to me? And as because what you're looking for your parents, but there's different ways of finding your parents.
That's a very compassionate way to handle it.
Yeah.
As we go looking for your coat, then I'm going to redirect the conversation and your action to doing something, and we're still talking about your folks. What did your dad do for a living? And then see if you can tell me what he did. Or was your mom a good cook? And you could say, yes, she was great, or no, she couldn't cook to save her soul. But again, once we get to your room and we're looking for your coat, I might sit down, tell you I have to rest. I need to take a break. Is it okay if we wait before we go outside? And then continue the conversation about your parents. Adam, can you talk about sundowning?
Yeah, well, sundowning is basically one of the most common behaviors later in Alzheimer's disease, and it involves a person either getting their time of day disrupted a little bit, where they start to become active later in the day, and also combines that with their propensity to wander. And so, people who, they want to sleep during the day, and then they want to be active at night, and they also want to wander, that can put their family through a lot, because they come home, and then the person really starts to try and get away from them, or really just doesn't be sitting around and not doing anything. And so that's one of the behaviors where sometimes medication helps with that, or sometimes just having somebody by to wake somebody up during the day, get them out of bed, get them doing stuff during the day can help.
I just thinking, Jim and Adam, that time comes for me. I hope Jean will put me somewhere where Julie is, if she's going to handle me as professionally as compassionate as she just described. Very well done. We appreciate the time. Number one, Julie, thank you very much for pitching in with us today.
Oh, this was
really appreciate
delight.
having you here a lot. You added a lot of dementia to emphasis to this, the problem on dementia, dimension to the dementia problem. Adam Castelli, we appreciate very much your giving us your time and your expertise this morning. This has been an eye-opener for the old guy. We've all known about Alzheimer's and dementia, and we've experienced it, some in our families and some with close friends and relatives and so forth. But to have somebody who has some degree of expertise talk to us about it has been very, very helpful. We appreciate your presence, Adam Castelli.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, sir. We always try to close Viewpoint. This is a lighter note about the same subject, but the closing quote for today would be on a lighter note. Insanity is different from love, but it's sometimes hard to tell the difference. With that, we will close Viewpoint and look forward to next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.